Part of the William Patterson Broadcast Network. Brave New Radio.
Brave New Radio. Give us your tired, your poor, your hungry, your rockers, your punks, your freaks, your geeks, your Greeks, your party animals, your gangsters, your commuters, your residents, your students, your alums, your lawyers, your truckers, your calls, your tweets. And we'll give you rock, classic, indie, punk, alternative, easy, hard, raps, rhymes, mixes, and drops. We'll give you kick-ass music because we're WPSC 88.7 FM, Brave New Radio. Sound good?
Well, good morning, good morning. Good morning. And yes, if you can hear the sound of my voice and you're tuned in either on your computer to gobrave.org or in the New York area to WP 88.7 FM, and it is 6 a.m. on the East Coast, then you know you are listening to another edition of The Reading Circle with your host, Marc Medley. We come to you live each Saturday morning, 6 o'clock a.m. That's right, the early bird gets the worm, because we come to you with knowledge, motivation, and inspiration. And we come to you early with that. And my guest is even earlier because I have another West Coast guest. I'm going to introduce him shortly, but if you've been listening to the show any amount of time, you know our ritual and routine. I read from two books since it is the Reading Circle. I read two passages from two different books that I've been kicking the show off with now for the last umpteen years, just about all of the 14, not quite all of the 14, but close to it. We kick off with those two books because it does a few things. It gets my voice all warmed up. It gives us some inspiration to kick the show off in the morning, and the rest of it just flows. But I tell you what, before I do that, I'm going to shout out Officer Angel Perez, as Officer Perez is who escorted me into the building this morning. I tell you, they make me feel so special since I'm the first show of the morning. Everything is locked up and I have the opportunity to get escorted in. So they really make me feel like I'm this big celebrity, even though, you know, I'm just kind of like that little peon, that little nobody. The building is just locked, but it's still nice to be escorted in by the police. So I'm going to shout out Officer Angel Perez. Knowing who to trust. When I am afraid, I will trust in you. Today's prayer: dear God, when I am afraid, I will trust in you. I will not be afraid, for I know that you are with me and that nothing is more powerful than you. Amen. Today's reflection: David's plight as he fled for his life from the wrath and vengeance of King Saul reminds me of a saying I once read on a poster hanging on the walls of an office mate's cubicle regarding paranoia. Yes, sometimes people are out to do you harm. When you are afraid, remember to put your trust in God. And after God provides, remember to be thankful for God's deliverance, that God may keep your feet from stumbling, that you may walk before God in the light of life. That's from the book, What Can Happen When We Pray. And then from the second book that we read from each week, written by Iyanla Van Zant, and I'm trying to get her on the show at some point as well. She says in her book, Until Today, for July the 11th, I will gain more understanding when I realize who I am is divine. If you are a chameleon in the grass, it will appear to be green. If you are that same chameleon in the mud, it will appear to be brown. What a wonderful gift nature provides its creation: the ability to change its appearance in order to survive. For we human beings, the ability to adapt in order to fit in has one major drawback. If we do it too often, we run the risk of forgetting who we truly are. We have a business mask, a social mask, a home mask, a play mask, and a don't mess with me, I'm not playing mask. Then there are the many masks of the many roles we play. There's the daughter, son mask, the mother mask, the father mask, the wife, husband mask. There is the help me, I'm lost mask. Each of our masks carries duties and responsibilities, fears and frustrations, likes and dislikes, demands and desires. Sometimes the responsibilities of one mask conflict with those of another. Or to hold one mask in place, there may be things we must do that are inappropriate for the other masks we wear. In fact, we can become so skilled at putting on the appropriate mask at the appropriate time in order to survive that we can eventually lose sight of our true essence. Perhaps it is time to wear the mask of divine identity. Find your true essence and allow it to show in all of the roles you play. If you wear it all of the time, there would be a lot less confusion about what to do and how to do it. Until today, you may have allowed your environment to determine the mask you wear. Just for today, devote yourself to discovering or rediscovering the truth about your divine self so that tomorrow you can show up in your true divine color. Today, I'm devoted to remembering and demonstrating the truth about the divine identity that I am. All right, that's from the book Until Today. And I'm going to share the weather with you. I'm going to introduce our guest. He's already waiting on the line patiently. And we will be underway. So right now here in northern New Jersey, in the Wayne, New Jersey area, it is 63.1 degrees. We're working our way up to a high of 87. Sunny today, going to be clear skies tonight. The low is going to move back to where we are now, which is 64. Then tomorrow, Sunday, sunny and clouds mixed. We're going to have a high of 90, that's right, 90, and a low of 67, partly cloudy Sunday night. And then on Monday, expected to be partly cloudy skies, high of 86, low of 67. And as we round out the forecast on Tuesday and Wednesday, expect partial cloudiness early on Tuesday, 40% chance of rain, 82% as a high, 69 as a low, scattered thunderstorms in the evening. And then on Wednesday, cloudy early with partial sunshine expected late, high of 86, low of 65. That rounds out the weather forecast brought to you right here from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center. Now is the time we all wait for each Saturday morning, and that is the introduction of my guest, and then for the interview to get underway. And I have been anticipating this interview since we confirmed it and agreed to it. I've been putting it out for the last couple of weeks because on last week we did not have a show due to the holiday. But 2 weeks ago, I let you all know that my guest was going to be on the line with me this morning, and it is none other than J.J. Birden. And if you're a football fan and you've been watching for a number of years, as I have, then you would know that JJ played in the NFL. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. Born and raised in Northeast Portland, Oregon, JJ attended Lakeridge High School in Lake Oswego, Oregon. He earned a track and field scholarship to the University of Oregon. After running competitively his first year, he begged Oregon's then head football coach, Rich Brooks, for a chance to, quote, walk on, unquote, the football team. He was determined to show Coach Brooks that even at 5'10", 150 pounds, JJ, that's where I am right now, he could play college football. JJ made the team that year and is considered the first track star to successfully walk on and excel at football for the Oregon Ducks. He continued to stand out in both football and track and field during his remaining years at Oregon. JJ was a standout track and field athlete, winning all Pac-10 and All American honors his junior year and qualifying for the 1988 Olympic trials in the long jump. He was recently inducted into the Oregon Athletic Hall of Fame as part of the Oregon Ducks' 1985 NCAA Championship team. JJ was drafted in the 8th round of the 1988 NFL Draft by the Cleveland Browns. After the draft, he attended the Cleveland Browns rookie camp And following a promising start, guess what? He suffered a knee injury, tearing his ACL during the third practice. The injury immediately ended his track career. Since JJ was only one internship away from graduating from the University of Oregon, the Cleveland Browns invited JJ to complete his internship by working in their public relations and sales department that fall. JJ graduated from the University of Oregon in 1989 with a Bachelor of Science degree in sports marketing. All right now. Football. Playing in the NFL was not part of JJ's dream. He rested his hopes on making the 1988 Olympic track and field team. However, after the knee injury in the Cleveland Browns rookie camp, his attention moved towards the NFL. He went on to have 9 successful years in the NFL, playing for such teams as the Cleveland Browns, Dallas Cowboys, Kansas City Chiefs, and the Atlanta Falcons. JJ played with some of the best players who ever played the game, and I know all of these names, JJ. Such players as Bernie Kosar, Troy Aikman, Ed Too Tall Jones, Derek Thomas, Marcus Allen, and Joe Montana. When asked what was the highlight of his career, JJ responded it would be the 1993 season with the Kansas City Chiefs. 2 special things happened that year. We made it to the 1993 AFC Championship game, and that was the year I got to catch passes from one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game, Joe Montana. JJ retired from the NFL in 1997. And of course, we have family. JJ married his college sweetheart, Reina De Leon, in 1990. They have 3 children together, LaJordan, Jr., Dante, and Camille. Due to JJ's NFL career, the Burdens have lived in various cities: Lee Summit, Missouri, been there, know there; Sewanee, Georgia, know there; and Tigard, Oregon, one place I haven't been. They now reside in Scottsdale, Arizona, know where that is. In 2007, JJ unexpectedly received a call from his nephew in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The following day, he was on a plane to Tulsa to check on his 5 nieces and nephews. During this visit, JJ discovered his nieces and nephews were to be placed in foster homes. After consulting his wife, they were awarded full guardianship of the children: Justin, LaShawn, Brandon, Aaliyah, and Alicia. He brought them back to Oregon, where they were living at the time, to live with them. Although some have questioned the Burden's decision to go from a family of 5 to a family of 10, JJ says sometimes you have to do what you have to do. I know that's right, to support your family. Plus, Raina and I cared about our nieces and nephews and could not see ourselves abandoning them. To this day, there is never a dull moment in their household. They are a close-knit family who strive to put family and spirituality first, which they believe has contributed to an exciting and happy family life. JJ Birden, welcome to the Reading Circle with Marc Medley.
Good morning, Marc. Welcome. Good to be here.
A good understanding of who the guest is, but secondly, my hope always is that it's an inspiration, that when people hear the experiences, that they're saying, okay, because clearly as we read your bio, we could hear the ups and downs in terms of the knee injury and so forth and so on, but yet you kept on progressing. You kept on persevering. And so it is always my hope, regardless of how long or short the bio is, that it will be an inspiration to the listener, that they can say, you know what, if it can happen for JJ, it can happen for me. And maybe that might be the little next nudge they may need to keep going. So I am honored that you've graced the microwaves and the airwaves with your efforts and everything that you're doing. As I said, I came across you on one of the social media sites, whether it was Twitter or LinkedIn. I forget whichever one it was. I kept seeing your name pop up, and I started following you, and then I saw you advertise a webinar you were doing for a book you had written. And as I said, I'm going to check out the webinar, and then I'm going to see if I can get him to come on the show. And sure enough, after watching the webinar, I contacted JJ through social media, and he graciously agreed, and that is how we are here. So again, thank you. We're going to take a short. I'm going to share some information with folks. I tell them I don't do breaks because I ain't going nowhere, and I don't want them to go anywhere. So I just tell them to use this couple of minutes that I share information with them to let somebody know that JJ Birden is on the air with me. You know the drill, listening audience. Get on all your social media sites. Get on there, text them, tweet them, do what you need to do, and tell someone JJ Birden is on the air with me on gobrave.org.
Hey, what's up? Thinking about you. XOXOXO. Want to snuggle. ... JK. Hit me back. You getting these texts? ? We should hang later. I miss you. Holla at ya, boy. Holla back. Holla back. Holla back. Are you at home? Where are you? What are you doing? OMG. You are making me mad. Are you with your ex? You better text me back. I'm waiting outside your house.
Relentless, aggressive texting is like sending an angry robot to deliver your message. When does the robot become dangerous? Let us know at that'snotcool.com.
That'snotcool.com.
Brought to you by the Ad Council.
All right, I trust everyone has done what they've been asked to do, and we're going to go ahead and get our interview underway. And first off, let me thank JJ, because JJ, like many of our guests, is calling in from the West Coast. So while we think we're up early here on the East Coast, with it being about 6:15 or so, it's 3:15 there. So we thank you for rising early to join us. So all right, let's take this back kind of from the beginning in terms of some of the things that we shared in the biography. You're like maybe the second, third, maybe even fourth professional athlete in terms of whether it was NFL or NBA that didn't start out that way but wound up there. What was that kind of like? Your original dream was to run track and to make the Olympics, and then the knee injury came about, and it just seems interesting as I read the bio that even with the knee injury, you still played football. How did that all come about?
Yeah, it's really interesting how it turned out, because as you kind of alluded to in the bio, the NFL was the furthest thing from my mind. When I finished college, I was about 5'10", 157 pounds, and I just never visualized myself as a professional football player. And my passion was track and field. It's what I've always loved to do. It's what I've always enjoyed. And then all of a sudden you're throwing this curveball, at rookie camp, and I tear up my ACL, and it was like, okay, I can't run track. Now what do I do? And I'll tell you, I literally went through this process of saying, you know what, the NFL got me hurt. The NFL is going to get me healthy. I said, I'm going to this Cleveland. I'm going to make these guys rehab me. They get me healthy again, So that first year I sat on injured reserve, and that was the year I'm watching, I'm learning, I'm understanding the game, I'm watching the athletes, their ability, their speed, everything, and I'm thinking, you know what? I could play in this league. I could actually play in this league. I just got to get healthy. And so that first year was kind of a blessing in disguise, because prior to that, I didn't think I could play, but because I got that year to kind of sit, watch, and learn,
right,
I started to totally change my mindset and say, you know what, this is the new goal. We're going to play in the NFL.
And see, this is where this fascinates me, because when I'm not doing radio, I share this weekly. It usually works its way into the conversation. When I'm not doing radio on the weekends, I'm a principal of a school during the week. And most of my kids, my school is a grade 2 to 8 school now, but most of my kids, when you ask them what they're going to be when they grow up, they're either going to be in the NFL or the NBA. There's no, it's like, and then I'm hearing you saying that was not what I was saying as a kid, and yet I wound up there. And like I said, you're the second or third athlete that I know personally now that kind of did not start. I know Rory Sparrow. Rory grew up here in the Paterson, New Jersey area and wound up in the NBA, and that wasn't his original goal. And he wound up there. Victor Cruz, I don't think Victor really intended to go NFL, but he wound up kind of walking on the same way. with the Giants. So there's 2 or 3 of you that wasn't your original intent. And that's fascinating in and of itself, because there's so many kids that will say, oh, if I can just get there. And you guys kind of made your way there, and that really wasn't your intent. But for me, the real upshot of the story is, for most people, the torn ACL would have been it, period. No track, no football, no anything. What kind of inspired you to keep going regardless, or to come back from the injury that would have, for the most part, taken most people out altogether?
It was the answer I got from the doctor, because I looked him straight in the eye, and I still remember the doctor's name, Dr. Bergfeld, in the Cleveland Clinic, and I said, Doctor, I'm known for my speed and my athletic ability, and I said, will I be able to get my speed back? And he goes, JJ, absolutely. And he said, if you work hard enough, you might even come back even faster. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah. And that it kind of set a little personal challenge. Okay, so not only are we going to come back healthy, I'm coming back faster. And you know what happened after that year of rehab? I came back faster.
And see, there's some serious inspirational message, because I know you're a motivational, inspirational speaker, if you will. And that story alone is an inspiration, because right there you just said, not only did I come back, but I came back faster. And I also heard that the doctor said, but you're going to have to do some work, because that's what we try to get the kids to understand. Well, okay, you're telling me you're going to the NFL and you're going to the NBA, but one, what are you doing to get there at this point? What are your plans? And a lot of times they kind of look at you like you have 3 heads. Like, well, what do you mean? What am I doing right now to get there? Oh, well, what are you doing? And so I heard you say the doctor said, but you're going to have to work. So obviously you put in that work.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he laid it out for me. He said it's going to take you, a year or so, to be able to get to that point. But if you're willing to put in the consistent work, listen to your trainer and get out there and really give the effort, it can happen. He said, but he kind of said, but you got to have a little vision here. This is not going to happen overnight. You got to anticipate this will happen down the road if you do these things. And for me, I've, throughout my career from college and high school, I was never right away the starter. I was never the main player. Even in high school, it was my sophomore year. I was on the sophomore team, and, I had to wait my opportunity to become a starter, my senior year at Lakeridge. Then at Oregon, I walked on, and I had to wait 4 years to really be the man at Oregon.
Right.
And so it was something I was very familiar with, and being patient, waiting for my opportunity, but putting in the work so that when I got my opportunity, I would be ready.
All right, now I heard about 3 life lessons right there in that little bit of time we were talking. The vision, the patience, and then be prepared for the opportunity when it comes to you. Because if you do the things that JJ was just talking about, the opportunity will have to come to you one way or another. The question will be, as he just said, will you be prepared when the opportunity comes up? And I'm going somewhere with this because as we get further into the interview, we're going to talk about JJ's book, which is all about that. Matter of fact, the title of the book says, when opportunity knocks, he gives you 8 surefire ways to take advantage. And that's how JJ is on the show today, because we're going to talk about his book, but I want you to see how everything else connects. So we're working our way up through, as JJ went through high school, as he went through college, he was injured, and then he now makes the NFL. What was that like for you? Because it's interesting to read the weight and the height, because that's where I am at this point. I'm at 155, 5'10". That's where I am. And I'm looking at myself saying, wow, I can't imagine going up against these guys that's 200 and 300 pounds. What was that like for you?
Immediately, it was a learning experience because once I recovered that next year and I started going through training camp, I recognized something right away. Everybody was athletic. Everyone was fast. Everyone was strong. Everybody there was an All-American or All-State. They all had the same accolades. And so I quickly realized it wasn't just that part. It was more the skill, developing the right skills and the mindset as you're going against these pros. And I'll tell you, that first training camp, I remember I was getting tossed around by these DBs. These DBs, it was Hanford Dixon and Frank Minifield with the Cleveland Browns. and I couldn't get off the line. They were just like jamming me. I remember one time Hanford Dixon said we were running this play, and he jammed me, and he just threw me out of bounds, and he said, "Hey, little man, you got to do better than that if you want to play in the NFL." And I never forget him saying that, But the thing about me is that I'm not one of those that would just sit there and like, oh, well, hey, maybe it's not right for me, or maybe I'm not cut out for the NFL. No, I was sitting there learning. I was watching the other experienced wide receivers and seeing what they were doing to beat that man-to-man technique or how they were running the route. What was their competitive advantage? And so I was just, I just watched and learned, and then I started to apply what these guys were doing, and then eventually I got a lot better at it. But it was a wake-up call that first year when I started going against these guys.
Okay, as you're listening to JJ talk, he's giving you a bunch of life lessons. I don't know if all these are in the book or not, but I'm sure some of them are. But he just said he watched, and he learned, and then he applied. Watched, learned, and applied. And again, I'm the size that he was quoting there in his bio. I'm that size now. I went from 178 to about 155 or so. I lost 20 pounds over the last year or so. But that's the size I always was in high school, so forth and so on. And I'm saying all that to say is I can relate to the size, and I've been near folks who are the weights of guys that generally play in the NFL. So he's in there now. He once again didn't quit, because that was an opportunity to say, you know what, I'm just not cut out to play with these big guys. That was not his story. He continued to persevere, learn, and apply. Now, I'm going to tell you, I've been following football since I was 12, and that's, for me now, 40-some years. And all your teams I'm happy with the exception of one. That's the Dallas Cowboys, because I have been a lifelong Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And there's just certain teams that, as a Steelers fan, that you just don't get along with, and that's the Cowboys and the Oakland Raiders. And I was back in the day when Terry Bradshaw and Franco and all of them were playing back in the 70s and 80s. I've been a Steelers fan since then. But I'm teasing you, but I know the game, and I know the game well. I played it as a kid, and I know what he means in terms of being the little guy. But see, what I'm really trying to get the little listening audience to understand is even being the little guy does not mean you're out of the race. It does not mean you're out of it. Because I'm looking here again as I read through the bio, I'm looking at the names, and wow, they brought back all memories. Ed Too Tall Jones, again, as a Steeler fan, I remember Ed Too Tall. And you had a chance to play with them, because I mean, what is it like to be able to talk, to say I played with those guys? Because most of them, if not all of them, are retired by now. But you said I was there, I played with them.
Yeah, that was an unexpected surprise, when you realize that here's some of the greatest athletes to play this game, and now you're in the same locker room with them, or in Joe's case, in the same huddle. And that was that took me some time to get used to, especially with Joe, because I watched Joe play when I was in the 8th grade,
right?
And obviously appreciated him as a quarterback and just his success. And now I'm in the huddle with Joe, and I can remember the very first time I was in the huddle with Joe, and I was just sitting there thinking, like, Joe's giving the play, and I'm like, okay, that's Joe Montana. That's Joe Montana. And I couldn't get over that. And then I remember the very first practice, we're running these offensive plays, and the first play is X hook, and I'm X, and I'm thinking, like, oh shoot, I'm getting Joe's first pass. Oh, this is so cool. He goes, here's how I do this, okay? I don't wait for you to get open. I've already scanned the defense. I know where the hole is. I throw it to an area, and I expect you to get your head around faster. But it was that point taught me something immediately. Okay, right. I need to be better at the top of my route, and I'm playing with one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. You better step up your game, So it really improved my ability as a wide receiver.
Well, I'm sure it did, and I'm sitting here again. I'm tickled as I listen to you, because listening audience, I don't know if you picked up, but this is someone who's already in the NFL himself saying, wow, I'm with. So he's in the huddle now in awe of who he's actually playing with, even though he's in the NFL himself, and people in the stands and kids are in awe of you. Because I'm sure, I mean, what was that for you in terms of I mean, you all as athletes, you're seen by so many different people. Because I always tell people, look, the major difference between entertainers and athletes are they're paid a whole heck of a lot more money and they're seen by a whole heck of a lot more people. Other than that, they're people just like everybody else. But still, from the standpoint of constantly, when people see you out on the street or if they see you in the supermarket this year, and they're like, because I've been around professional athletes before, and it's always funny to watch the reactions of people whenever they see you. What is that like for you?
That was interesting for me because I didn't play the game or play sports for that.
Right.
I wasn't a guy that did it because I wanted all this attention, and then all of a sudden I had it, and it was really an adjustment because it wasn't something I was used to. And I can remember, those big years in KC, especially when Montana and Marcus joined our team,
right.
when we were getting so overwhelmed with exposure that I couldn't go to the grocery store anymore.
Right.
And I tell my wife, babe, I can't go to store with you anymore because everybody wants to talk football all the time. And that was a little uncomfortable for me because it was something I wasn't used to. But, you adapt to it. And obviously I enjoyed signing autographs. That was always really a neat thing to do. But I learned one trick, though, when I was around Joe Montana. It was that when we would have a lot of crowds and they would, Joe, 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 I would just walk next to Joe because everybody would forget about me.
All right, if you've just joined us, you can tell I'm having a good time with this interview. My guest is J.J. Birden, former NFL player, but he's transitioning. We're going to talk about that before the interview is over as well, because about a year or so ago, or maybe less than that, I had the ex-wife or the former wife of an NBA player. I had Carlita Hodges on the air. Her husband played NBA basketball. It was Craig Hodges. And she was, as we were going through the interview, she shared something in terms of in the off season that for him as an athlete, his whole demeanor and everything would shift because he missed the crowd noise. It was just something about in the off season, not hearing the crowd noise, being in front of the crowd, everything that just kind of shifted his entire persona. Did you find that type of experience, or it didn't phase you one way or the other, or did you miss it in the off season that you just couldn't? I guess it's like a truck driver get what they call white line fever. I mean, did you get like crowd fever of having to hear the noise all the time?
Actually, I didn't. I really didn't at all because I loved the off season. I mean, it was, the football season was special. Obviously, it's a business,
right?
24/7.
Right.
So when the off season came, I loved the off season because I literally got paid to work out.
Right.
I would go to the gym and and run routes for like 4 hours, and then I had the rest of my day to spend with my family. And I cherished that off season because it was the one time that I really had some freedom to do what we want. And I tell you the other thing, it was the one time I was healthy because you were always hurt during the season.
Right.
So, no, I didn't. I didn't miss that noise. And, obviously I missed scoring touchdowns because that was always the exciting thing for wide receivers when you could score a touchdown at Arrowhead Stadium, have 80,000 people screaming and having a ball. So that's interesting to hear that about Hodges.
Yeah, and I had never, until we talked, that never just crossed my mind. But she said, like, athletes go through like a withdrawal in the off season, or many athletes do, a withdrawal of just, they don't hear the fan noise anymore, and it does something, or at least it did something to him. All right, if you've joined us again, I'm going to share some more information, but you've got to get on all your social media sites, and I don't do anything I don't ask you to do, because while it's on, I'm on Hootsuite, and Hootsuite is connected to about 14 different sites for me, or at least pages and all that, and I go through there, I shoot it out and tell them, tune in to gobrave.org so they can hear this inspirational interview. Because I don't know about you, for me, it's an inspiration to hear the various obstacles, and yet throughout the obstacles, you still didn't quit. And that's what folks need to hear, and that's what I believe is the upshot of the book as we begin to talk about that. And then there's the piece that we talked about in terms of the adopting of the 5 nieces and nephews. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So let someone know that an inspirational interview is going on the Reading Circle, and it is none other than J.J. Birden.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your basement. There's a pair of overalls that overall you're not so into anymore. A perfectly good laptop that hasn't seen your lap in months. And even more stuff. But still no jobs? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed. And they're the stuff inside your stuff. Even inside that winter coat that moved with you to Phoenix. Our job is to unlock those jobs. And it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover keytar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs. Find your nearest donation center at goodwill.org. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Okay, I gave you that little musical interlude because I was doing exactly what I asked you to do. My latest tweet says, you've got to tune in to this inspiring interview with J.J. Birden. He's saying things that you need to hear. Tune in now on gobrave.org. So you'll see that on your Twitter or your Facebook pages, or LinkedIn, or whatever you may follow me on. We do need to tell somebody because, again, this is a story that needs to be heard because it's about never giving up regardless. And there's some other things going on as well that plays into that. So, okay, we've kind of gone through playing in the NFL, and now it's transition time. It's time to retire. How did you go about it, or what was that like for you in terms of now, the fan noise and going to the supermarket and folks wanting autograph? All that, for the most part, now is ending. You're going to a new phase.
Yeah, for me, it was a much easier transition because, one, I never expected to play in the NFL. So
that's true, too. Yeah, that's right.
So when I got there, I took every year as if it was my last. It was a special year. I said, hey, I'm going to make the most out of this year. And I'll tell you, Mark, I was thinking, like, okay, maybe I could play 3 years, and okay, veterans are vested at 4 years. So I was like, let's see if we can play 4 years. And once I hit my fourth year, then I just took each year, individually, like, okay, let's get this, let's go another year. Okay, let's go another year. And I think it was about year 6 that I really started making connections outside of football, and I started to really plan for life after football.
Right.
Because I wanted to have a plan B. And so when year 9 came up, I remember that last year in Atlanta, I got kind of banged up, and I thought, you know what, I got 9 years in the league. I'm relatively healthy, and if I stop right now, I could walk away, be healthy, I could spend time with my family, and I could move on to a second career. And so that's what I did. I retired in 97, but I had befriended some doctors in Kansas City, and I immediately got involved in the medical industry. And I remember talking to these pulmonologists, and I said, how can I get involved in your industry without going to medical school? And they all this one gentleman, Dr. Sid Devins, he directed me to this durable medical equipment company his friend just started. And that's a company where they provide oxygen tanks and CPAP machines for patients with sleep apnea. And I ended up buying his company and hired this guy to run it. And that kind of launched a new, entrepreneur career for me in the medical industry, which led to me owning some rehab centers as well in Kansas City. And then I had another buddy who had launched a fitness equipment gym in Atlanta, so I got involved in that. So for the next 9 years, I spent, actively involved in these companies, in different states, but that's what I did. And it was a nice transition. It was a total learning lesson, but it was nice to be able to have something to turn to once my career was over.
Now, you actually now put in force what your degree was in, because you're actually in sports marketing, so you had a combination of both. You had the sports and the business end.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like now I'm more kind of finally using that. Where initially I wasn't as much, but now I am, because now I'm into marketing and marketing products and opportunities, and so it's been a really good fit. But I learned so much during my NFL career in the off season because of the different connections I had, and just the different opportunities that popped up there. Because like one of the things I did was I did a lot of public speaking during the off season, because a lot of players, they're asked to do appearances, and I raised my hand right away because I wanted to get comfortable speaking in front of people, and so I did that during the course of my career, which now I am also a keynote speaker. So it's really been, it's been a skill I learned early that I'm able to maximize now.
Absolutely, and my ears perked up when I heard you say public speaking, because as an adjunct professor in a couple of the local colleges, that's the course I taught, was public speaking and communications. And it's interesting because there's something I'm thinking about launching myself at some point one day, dealing with athletes and public speaking, because I feel like there's a market there, or at least a market I can enter in terms of working with athletes and public speaking. And that is so critical. So the fact that you were volunteering for it, because JJ, believe it or not, most of the population would rather die, literally, than to get up and speak in front of people.
Yeah, I know, because when they were asking for volunteers, I remember in Cleveland, not too many people wanted to do it. And I kind of like was the lone kid in the classroom who raised his hand like, I'll do it, but I had an ulterior motive, and I wanted to get comfortable at speaking in front of other people.
But see, you had the wherewithal to do that. Again, that's another lesson. If you're listening, listen to, he's saying there is an end goal I was trying to get to. No pun intended. I was trying to get to the end goal, to the goal line. And in order for me to do what I plan to do in my plan B, I know I would need this skill, which was public speaking. And seriously, regardless if you're in the limelight or not, most people would rather, it's been documented research that they would rather die. And this is for something to me and for you, clearly I can tell that's something that's very natural. And people don't realize that even if you're good at it, you should have some nerves. Like I've been doing this 14 years, and every Saturday morning I still get a little bit of butterflies just whenever everything is coming up. But then once we get talking, everything goes away and we're rolling. That should be there, but the public speaking skill is so critical, and you had the foresight, the insight, and the wherewithal to say, well, even though I'm not comfortable at it at this point, I want to do it so I can get comfortable at it. Now, that's a lesson right there.
Yeah. But I will admit, like you just said, every time I do speak in front of an audience, I'm always nervous. My legs are shaking and all that.
And they
stuff.
should be. They should be.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good sign, because I always said, hey, if I'm not nervous and uncomfortable before this, then I'm getting a little bit too comfortable.
There you go. If you're that confident, you got to have some confidence. But if you come out in that attitude, it's almost like you're cocky. And it's been my experience whenever I've been in that position, that's when things fall apart. It's whenever you're in that mode of, I got this, I'm going to knock this out. But when you have, like I said, and my guess is, even as a player, because I always use the example with the students to try to help them connect. Before kickoff time, I'm almost sure most players have the butterflies and the churning and the nerves and the stomach. But once that ball is kicked off and the first tackle is made or the first catch is made, it's business as usual after that. And
that's a good point, because I tell you, talk about a nervous kid before every single game. I had a tradition of puking before every kickoff. I was so nervous.
Right.
I was the butterflies in every game. I would do that. But then after, the game starts, you start rolling. But isn't that interesting? It's that nervous energy.
Right.
But if you can use it in a positive manner, which is what I tried to do, you're good to go.
That's absolutely right. So now as you're going through, and now I'm on the page about your book. When did you decide to write the book, and what was that process like for you?
Well, during my career, I entertained the idea of writing a book, because I felt that people need to know what it's like to be on the inside.
Right.
And so I started taking a journal, or keeping a journal. I think it was midway through my career. How I was I'm going to let everyone know what's going on and the inside scoop, and then all of a sudden social media came out, and it's a lot easier to share that message. And I actually started a video vlog like 2 years ago, what's it like to play in the NFL?
All right.
And I have about 25 little short clips, and I shared the inside scoop. So that idea kind of went by the wayside, but I still felt I had a message, because when I reviewed my career and I thought, JJ, you were 5'10", 157 pounds. Right. There was nobody your size in the league. You know, think about all the people out there that have been told they can't do something. And so that's when the idea started to formulate, okay, we need to put a book together that conveys some kind of message like that, could really inspire people. And I met a gentleman in November 2013. His name is Dr. Will Moreland, and he's a leadership lifestyle trainer, and he was speaking at an event, and one of my buddies, Hassan, was like, hey, you got to hear Dr. Will. You got to hear Dr. Will. And I was like, I don't really feel like going. It was on a Saturday, and I didn't want to give up 4 hours. And so I went on the Internet, and I researched him, and I thought, whoa, this guy is, he's written 25 books. He's a motivational speaker. And I thought, let's go listen to him. And sure enough, as I'm mesmerized by everything that he's saying at his seminar, I thought, this is the guy. This is the guy that's going to mentor me and help me, start this project of writing a book, which I've always wanted to do.
Right.
I sat down with Dr. Will, and we were like brainstorming ideas and titles, and Dr. Will kept listening to all my content on the social media, and he said, you use the word opportunity a lot. And we both just said, opportunity has to be in that title. And that's kind of how it evolved from there, and really wanted to focus on showing people how to maximize their opportunities in life.
And again, in the listening audience, and we're going to talk about this when we get near the end of the interview, JJ really has the opportunity to promote, but the name of the book is When Opportunity Knocks, 8 Surefire Ways to Take Advantage. Because and then let me tell you why that's interesting, because a lot of people just kind of thinks two things. First thing, they think they're going to start at the top or be the best at whatever it is they want to do right off the bat. They don't really take into account obstacles. The other piece of it they don't take into consideration is planning and preparation. So a lot of times when the opportunity does come, you're not prepared for it. So even if the opportunity comes and you're not prepared, it's almost as if the opportunity shouldn't have come for you because you can't take advantage of it. And that's the book here is, all right, what do you need to do to be ready? Because the opportunity may not be there at the time that you're ready, but you ought to be using that time to prepare yourself. And again, that's what the book is. When Opportunity Knocks, he gives you 8 ways, 8 surefire ways to take advantage. And I'm on the page. It says, throughout JJ's life, as we've heard, he's dealt with many obstacles, yet he has never allowed those obstacles to prevent him from achieving success on various levels. For instance, during his quest to reach the NFL, many people said, like we're talking about, a 5'10", 157 pounds, he was too small to play a big man's game. Instead of allowing such negativity to break his focus, he used it as fuel to prove the doubters wrong and went on to have a very successful NFL career. JJ says, I have met so many people over the years who could have achieved some amazing things. And see, the operative word there is could have. Yet they allowed someone or the day-to-day challenges of life to get in the way. Therefore, they spend the rest of their life in a state of regret. Now, regret is a bad place to be. Whew. In life, we all have opportunities, no matter who we are, where we come from on our personal situation or our personal situation. The question is do we seize these opportunities? And when we do we take advantage of them? My goal with this book is to share 8 key principles to help anyone seize their opportunities in life. Again, the book is When Opportunity Knocks, 8 Surefire Ways to Take Advantage. The author is J.J. Birden. That's B-I-R-D-E-N. And if you've been listening, that's who we've been talking to. And he is talking and living what the book is titled, what it's about. Because as you've heard the story, J.J.'s come through various obstacles that for many would have been a setback. And it's interesting that I saw you had that word, Dr. Will picked up on opportunity, but I saw that word regret, and you heard me kind of give the commentary. That's a bad place to be, and I have very few regrets in life. But one of the ones I have may seem trivial, but it's been long-standing. Whenever I was in high school many years ago, I had the opportunity to march in our school's marching band, which at the time was one of the best in the state of New Jersey, if not the country. I played the piano. The band director asked me, he said, I'll teach you any other instrument you want so that you can march. Our band was patterned after Florida A&M, after FAMU. Uniforms, everything. The band director was from Grambling. He patterned everything after either FAMU or Grambling. Want to know? We were one of the best bands. And he stopped me and said, I know you play piano, but I will teach you any other instrument so that you can march. And I told him no. And JJ, to this day, saxophone. But I'm just sharing all that to say is that's something that just relatively small. I can't imagine someone that missed a really great opportunity and has to live with regret.
Yeah, that's like you said. That is that can really be troubling. I mean, regret is such a powerful word, and I think about that word because I was listening to something over last year, and I never forgot this. It said, one of the greatest pains in life is woulda, coulda, shoulda, and it is regret.
Yes.
And it is. And for me, I wanted to make sure that obviously we're imperfect human beings, so we're gonna make choices and decisions that we regret. Now,
right.
If I can minimize some of these, I wanted to at least try to do that to the best of my ability. And I think, with my book, I'm trying to help people understand it really doesn't matter who you are, because, sometimes people say, hey, well, I don't get such opportunities, I don't have such privileges or whatever, but I disagree. I mean, all of us,
right,
to some degree, have opportunities that come our way.
Right.
And there can be different types of opportunities. But, again, do you see them as opportunities, and are you really going after them? And that's really the whole point of my book is I want to share a blueprint with people on how to see them and how to take advantage of them.
Absolutely. If you just joined us, my guest is J.J. Birden, and we're talking about his book, When Opportunity Knocks, 8 Surefire Ways to Take Advantage. In terms of kind of like your mindset, let's go back, and I'll use football again as the analogy. If you went through, and we'll even use the one you said, Joe Montana's first pass when he hit the helmet. Do you ever let that one that you missed throw your game off for the rest of the game?
No, you couldn't afford to.
Right.
I mean, you'd have that moment where you're like, you drop a pass and you're like, oh, but I learned something very early in my career. Marty Schottenheimer, my coach, he used to always say, one snap and clear. He'd say, when a play happens, that's one snap, one play, no matter what happens, you clear it. And you got to go to the next play, because if you can't and you start, thinking about what happened on the previous play, it's going to affect your ability to be successful on the next play. So that's something that I've always tried to practice and keep moving forward. So, yeah, it can be a little challenging, especially in the NFL. If you have a bad game and you have a couple drop balls,
right,
that can last with you for a couple days.
And I asked the question because, I mean, really, metaphorically, sports and life, they're very much the same. And just like you said, all right, because in life, just as you had the obstacles, sometimes bad decisions, sometimes not bad. But as we said, because we're not perfect, things happen. But you can't stay stuck. You have to be able to move on. And that's why I kind of did the analogy between a drop pass and things happening in life. Yeah.
I always try to preach to my kids. I say, no matter what happens, you just keep moving forward. You never lose sight of the objective, of the goal. Just keep moving forward. I always tell them how, life and success is an endurance race. You're like in an endurance race, and the beauty of it is if you keep your legs moving forward, you can cross the finish line. And the beauty is that everybody can win.
Absolutely.
You just got to keep going.
So as you were writing the book now, what did you face any challenges as you now, because now writing a book is something new. What challenges or hurdles, if any, did you face as you're now putting this book together?
Well, the first challenge was recognizing that it is possible to write a book, because I thought of writing a book to be a very daunting task.
Right.
I mean, you see all these books in the library and everywhere. You're like, man, writing a book, that's got to be really hard to do, But having a mentor really made a big difference, because Dr. Will said, okay, just start writing. And so I just, I started writing, and I remember giving him that first draft. It was like about 49 pages, and he goes, okay, this is a great start, but you got to go deeper. You train and expand, and that's kind of when I started opening up my writing, and I realized that, it's okay to share these points. It's
Right.
okay to write this. And that's when that next draft, I came to him, it was 140 pages. And you could just tell kind of the evolution I went through as a writer, going from draft 1 to draft 2. And so that was kind of the first challenge, is just understanding that process. And then it was just trying to not be such a perfectionist.
Right.
Because we went through draft 2, then it was draft 3 and 4, and we're making all these corrections. And I remember in draft 4, I had all these great stories, because I really I have a lot of stories to really connect to these teaching points. And I had so many stories, and Dr. Will said, okay, somebody's not making the cut. You got to start cutting some of these stories. He goes, you got to leave the first team in. So who's going to be on the first team? So then it was like, okay, we won't keep this story. We'll take that one out. And so, but then when it was finally done, I tell you one thing: when those editors got it, because I was always like, okay, how does this sound? How does this sound? Then when the editors got it and they returned it back to me, I said, well, this is pretty good.
That's interesting, because I many times I will ask authors that I interview, after you go back and read your work, do you ever have that feeling of, wow, did I say that? Was that me? Did that come?
Yeah, I did, because there was a couple of points where the editor, they liked something better over here, and they kind of flipped a couple things. And when I read it, I was like, well, that's pretty good. Did I put that on?
Exactly.
I was like, so that was one. I wrote a blog recently, and one of the points I mentioned was how to write a book, and I said, right away get a mentor, and right away I said, find out who your editor's going to be.
There you go.
They're the one that's going to clean up all your work.
That's right. But yeah, it is a surreal type experience to be creative and get something out, and then go back and go through it, and you really don't even recall. It's like, wow, like you said, wow, this is better than I thought it was when I was doing it.
Yeah.
To see it in that format. So what was it like for you? Because now, all right, you've been at for most of the children I serve, the pinnacle is to be in a professional sports league. So you've been there, you've had your name on the back of a uniform, and I'm sure all the teams. Some teams don't do names on the back, but most of them do. You had your name on the back of uniform, your number. Folks know who you are. But what was it like for you to now get this book in your hand that has J.J. Birden on the cover? Because I see written by former NFL player J.J. Birden, and it's in white letters and red background. What was that like for you to see that?
It was almost like scoring my first NFL touchdown. I mean, because that was a very special moment in my career, my first touchdown, and that's, I kind of had that feeling, and it was like when the UPS driver got here, I told my wife, I said, grab the camera.
Right.
I said, right. They say when an author gets his first book and he opens it up, it's a special moment. So
that's
I had to
right.
videotape the whole moment. And
that's right.
It was so amazing to open those boxes and to see your book, finished product, what you put together. I didn't have a ghost writer. These are my words.
Absolutely.
My blood, sweat, and tears, and it was ready for the public. And
yes.
It was just a special moment.
It is, and that's what, like I told you last night, I generally don't have pat questions. Questions work their way in through the conversation, but that's one I usually work in, because I know that feeling as well. Because the music that's playing in the background is from my original musical CD. And I remember when the exact same experience, when the box of CDs came in the mail, when I opened it and actually saw the CD cover with my name on it, the artwork, the song title, so forth and so on. It is a feeling that's very hard to put in words. It's very hard to describe, but it is a certain feeling. And I usually work that question in, and you hit it. When you said the UPS driver or postal driver, whoever came to the door, that's it exactly. And it's interesting to hear how people, because the truth of the matter is, anybody who's creative or you do any type of work that's going out to the public, a part of you, work that's gone through you, is now going out to other people. And so it is an interesting and an awesome way of sharing.
Yeah, and it's also a little nerve-wracking, too, because now you're like, okay, what are people going to think?
Exactly.
Because even though you're pleased with the finished product, you're like, what is the impression people are going to get? So there's that point out, too. You're like, but you're like, okay, just you got to let it loose. You got to let it fly. And it's really been nice to hear some of the reviews, because it's only been out, I think, we started shipping 2 weeks ago.
Right. That's why.
Yeah, and it's been really neat to hear some responses, because one thing I was going for, obviously, I wanted interesting, I wanted to be valuable, but I wanted to hold people's attention.
Absolutely.
And I've had quite a few people tell me they sat down and read the book in 5 hours. They just could not put it down. And I thought, okay, mission accomplished.
There you go. I know that's right. And again, you having the opportunity in your own way to make life better for somebody else. And that's really, as I transition into the next set of questions, we're still going to talk about the book, but there was a piece in your bio about taking on your nieces and nephews. And it got to that point where you said sometimes you just have to do what you have to do when it comes down to family. And that's why you heard me say, I know that's right. Life really is about not just what you can get for yourself. It's about how you can make life better for others. Now, some could say, hey, he's hit the top in terms of professional athlete, fame, fortune. He can just worry about him. But that's not what I got from you. What I got from you was, even with all of that, family is important. People are important. That's the vibe I'm reading and feeling from you. So you said here that, folks were questioning, well, your family went from 5 to 10. And so talk a little bit about that, as we come down to the close in the next however long it is. I usually go an hour, but when the session is really good and if the guest is willing to hang out, we go longer. But let's talk a little bit about that. What was that like for you?
Well, it was definitely a surprise. All of a sudden you get a call from your nephew in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you got a feeling something's not right, and you're on a plane, you're there. 24 hours later, you're in a courthouse, and it really just caught us by surprise. But I wanted to just respond, and because I could tell something wasn't right.
Right.
And when you're sitting in that courthouse and the judge looks you in the eye and tells you you're the next of kin, all 5 of your nieces and nephews are going to be put in foster homes.
Wow.
What would you like to do, Mr. Birden?
Wow.
That was a question. It gives me chills when I think about it. And I'm you know what I told that judge? I said, hold up, let me call my wife.
Right.
Right. I said, because as I cherish my own family, there was a concern. I thought, I don't want to jeopardize my own family.
Absolutely.
And so out of respect, I need to talk to my wife and see what she thinks. And at that moment, I would have done either or. But fortunately, I married a beautiful woman, not only outside but inside.
Absolutely.
Who it quickly said, bring him home.
Right.
Bring him home. And it was a done deal.
And going back to the spirituality piece, you all are being blessed and will continue to be blessed beyond measure for that. Because, again, and oddly enough, everybody doesn't have that mindset or that spirit. They were kind of say, well, I'd love to do, and some people may not be in the position. I mean, I'm not judging one way or the other, but there are some people that just flat out say, hey, there's no way.
Yeah.
So the fact that you say, well, hold on, let me check, let me call to see if there's, and the fact that you two had the same mindset of, yep, bring them here. I mean, that's beautiful. I read that piece and was like, wow. I mean, that in and of itself says a whole lot.
Yeah. And to be honest, we weren't really in a position to add 5 more children to our family, But
right.
but we just said we're gonna figure this out. We're gonna make this thing work. And when we did, that was the disappointing was the reaction of some family members and some close friends who just thought we were crazy and we should have never done it, But my wife and I, again, we saw this where others might saw this as an obstacle. We saw it as an opportunity to impact 5 more lives.
There you go. I'm going to change over. We're in the 7 o'clock hour. I just need to share very quickly, like the weather and everything, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more because I know it's now about 4 o'clock your time.
Hey, we're good.
Okay. We'll chat a little bit more, and before you know it, we'll be done. But I am thoroughly, if no one else is inspired, but I am, because that's the beautiful thing. As I told you last night, over the years, I've met so many wonderful people that have just been an inspiration to me. And so I am just sitting here, just as you said, watching, observing, listening, and now I'm going to take and apply.
WPSC-FM 88.7, Wayne, New Jersey.
Part of the William Patterson Broadcast Network. Brave New Radio.
Brave New Radio. Give us your tired, your poor, your hungry, your rockers, your punks, your freaks, your geeks, your Greeks, your party animals, your gangsters, your commuters, your residents, your students, your alums, your lawyers, your truckers, your calls, your tweets. And we'll give you rock, classic, indie, punk, alternative, easy, hard, raps, rhymes, mixes, and drops. We'll give you kick-ass music because we're WPSC 88.7 FM, Brave New Radio. Sound good?
Straight from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center, here's your local forecast.
All right, we've only creeped up a couple of degrees. It's 65 degrees right now. We're working our way up to a high of 87. We're going to drop back down to about where we are now, a low of 64. Expected to be sunny today with clear skies. And then tomorrow, Sunday, intervals of clouds and sunshine, high around 90. Sunday night, a few clouds, backing to a low or coming back down to a low of 67. Then on Monday, expect a high of 86, a low of 67 again. Partly cloudy skies, though. And then on Monday night, it's going to be generally fair. And as I said, the low on that is 67. Tuesday, expect a little bit of rain, partly cloudy in the morning, followed by scattered thunderstorms in the afternoon. High of 82, low of 69. And then on Wednesday, it's going to be mostly cloudy again, high of 85 and a low of 65. Well, guess what? That is the weather brought to you right here from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center. I trust that you've been with us since the 6 o'clock hour, but if you have not and you just joined us, my guest is Renaissance Man, J.J. Birden. He's one that does not let obstacles get in his way. As a matter of fact, I don't even think he knows the word obstacle in his, or has it in his vocabulary. I think the word for him actually is opportunity. I think he's actually taken the word obstacle out of his vocabulary and replaced it with opportunity, hence the title of his book. And that's what we're talking about this morning. And if you've heard him talk, because really, JJ, it's about perspective and framing. And as I've heard you frame things, I never heard you frame anything from the perspective of it being like generally in and of itself bad. You've always looked at it as, well, okay, it is what it is now. Let me see what I need to do to turn it around.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I was raised, by my mom, who really was the first person to show me how to, seize an opportunity. Just,
right.
Single parent and how hard she worked to take care of us, and then I had a buddy growing up who was a trainer too. His name is Von Ray Johnson. He used to always end our conversation with "Stay positive." Stay
right.
positive. He would always say that, and to this day, it's something that's always stayed with me because it's given me the perspective that no matter what the situation is, there's always something positive. You got to find the positive
right.
point in any given situation. So it's just something that I've always preached and something I've always lived by.
Well, I tell you, it has served you well, and it's been a blessing to others. And now the fact that you have it in print format, because I am going to get my copy for sure. Is it in e-format as well, or is it? I'm on your site where I see it says order now. But how do folks get a copy of it? Is it in bookstores? Can you order it, or is this the only way to get it? Is through your website, or because technology now, there's so many different ways you can get things. How do folks get a copy of the book?
Yeah, well, right. We're kind of going through multiple phases of marketing, and the first phase of marketing was my website. So right now you can order the book through my website at jjburden.com. But next we'll do the Amazon, we'll do, e-reader. We'll have all the other options that are available, eventually. But initially everything's coming right through my website.
Okay. Because I usually, just about, especially over the last few years, there's one of two things that happen. Either the author will send me the book prior to the interview so that I can at least preview it, or either what has been happening more recently has been, I've just, don't send me, I want to support your work. And that's what I'm going to do here. Before the week is out, I'm going to actually order my copy from your website to have it sent to me to support your work, because that's how it all works. Because you're not necessarily doing it for the money per se. The money's nice, but that's not the original goal. But at the same time, folks need to support the work, and that's what I'm encouraging you all to do, because before the interview is over, JJ is going to have the opportunity to just straight up promote, and he'll be able to say anything other than the dollar amount. But in terms of websites, how to order, and all those type of things he's going to be able to do. And I'm going to encourage you all in the listening audience to support the work, because life is circular. What goes around comes around. In order for you to receive, you have to give. And that's where the whole process really is at this point. So JJ has now put out ways for you to be able to seize opportunities based on his experiences, which, as you've heard, he's had some. I mean, it's just, I just find it interesting that I find it, what is the word I'm looking for in terms of when it's just the opposite? I find it's interesting that the injury is what caused you to be in the NFL. That's amazing, because most time people hear injury and they think end of career. It's like the same thing that folks are going through over here with the Giants, with JPP getting his finger blown off with the fireworks, and folks are telling, okay, is that the end of his career? Is he going to be able to play anymore? Or something. So if people associate injury with ending, and in your case, injury was actually the beginning.
Yeah, it was. It really was. And I think, like I said, long as I got the okay that I could play again, because if the doctor said, no, you cannot play again, you could further damage your knee, it is impossible, then I would have moved to a plan B.
And that's important in itself. Matter of fact, that's one of the questions I was, because I told you earlier I work with kids every day. And I'm sure as a motivational speaker or a public speaker, you have the opportunity to work with kids as well. What advice do you give them? Because I know kids all across the country, that's usually their pat answer. I want to be in the NBA, NFL. Every now and again you might hear Major League Baseball, but most of the time it's NFL and NBA.
Right away I say have a plan B.
There you go.
I say right away. Successfully, you can have a chance to achieve that, but you need to have a plan B. And for me, my plan B was, my academics. That's why I made sure that I graduated.
Right.
I did not want to be one of those athletes who go to a four-year university and then they go play pro and they never graduate. I wanted that degree. Right. I wanted to finish what I initially started. And so, but yeah, I always tell young ones, have a plan B, because you just never know.
It is true. I mean, it's the conversations I have with kids are funny in terms of, you're like, look, you need to know how to read and know how to count. You need to know how to do things. Well, I don't need to get my education from Medley. I'm going to. I say, yeah, but okay, let's say you get there. You need to be able to count your money, or you're going to get beat. Educational piece.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mark, because even when you get there, because when I got to the NFL and they gave me this 3-inch playbook,
right,
I had to memorize all these plays, and not just memorize, I had to have the ability to process information and make decisions on a fly.
That's right.
And I saw so many great athletes who came into the league who were just gifted athletically, but they couldn't retain the plays.
Right.
They couldn't make those decisions at the drop of a dime. And so from an intellectual standpoint, I always tell everyone, I say, you see all these athletes running around, these guys are smart.
Right.
Are smart.
And excellent point, because we use that as well in terms of the playbook. Because some of my same kids, I mean, they're decent at learning, because they're playing midget football, they're playing Pop Warner, and they're playing local, whatever, recreation football, in that their age categories, 12, 11, 10. And that is one of the questions we ask too. Well, don't you remember the plays in your playbook? And they'll quickly nod their head yes or what. It's like, well, it's the same skill. It's the same skill that you would use, for your classroom work. But you are so right. It's not, being an athlete is not, and I know they have that old quote unquote dumb jock thing, but that's not true. And this takes me back years ago when I was actually teaching a diversity course, and I had athletes in the class, and they told me, Mr. Medley, we're not dumb at all. But they would say, because society thinks we're dumb, we're going to act that way. And athletes, that's what they would tell me. Like, well, since you think I'm stupid, I'm going to act stupid, but we're not. And I have not found that to be the case, because, again, the athletes that I know, they're very smart. I mean, Rory Sparrow was like an engineer. And so we had other folks in that same way. So you're absolutely right. And that's the message we try to get across in terms of that plan B. We're not trying to douse your dreams. And not to mention, It's not even a matter of dousing you, because even if you have a stellar career, even if you do 20 years, you're still only going to be in your early 40s when you're done.
Right.
It has to be something else that you're going to do for the rest of your time.
Yeah, it's one of the things I always tell athletes when young athletes would come in and they would say, "Hey, what kind of advice would you give me?" You know, and I'd well, save your money,
right?
One, and have a plan B, have a fallback plan, because you just never know. Even as a player,
right?
You know, you might be this incredible athlete, but there's variables you can't control. Maybe a coach likes this player better, or this guy was drafted. Maybe you make too much money. You don't make enough money. There's things you cannot control. But what I would say, control what you control. That means you can control the effort you give every day. You can control the relationship you have with your coaches, and you can control your performance. Focus on that.
There you go. There's some more life lessons, folks. Well, JJ, like I said, we're to the point now where you can promote in terms of any book signings, where you're going to be, how to order the book, your websites, anything that you want for her the next 5, 10, 15 minutes, however long you want to go. The mic is yours, your opportunity to promote. The only thing you can't say, and I have the price right in front of me because I'm looking at the website, but the only thing you can't do on the air is actually say the dollar amount. But anything else, anything short of that, the mic is yours.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, first, I would just encourage everyone to first understand the message we're sharing today, because the way I wrote this book, it is truly for everyone. It's not for one particular audience or industry or sex. Or it's for everyone, young, old. It doesn't matter, because like I said earlier, we all have opportunities in life. And so I want to encourage everyone, go to my website. And I put together a very simple URL to remember it. It's www.buyjjburdensbook.com. So it's just very easy. Buyjjburdensbook.com. Go there, order the book, and take in the information, because I not only believe that it'll benefit the readers, but they know several other people that will need that message as well. So I encourage everyone to pay it forward, to share it with others. And I'm all over social media. I love to connect with people. You type JJ Birden under any social media, platform, and I'm there.
And he is. As a matter of fact, there are no periods in the J's. It's straight up JJ, not J period, J period. No, it's JJ Birden, Birden, and he is there, and he does respond. Matter of fact, it's interesting you were saying about the webpage. If you put in just JJ Birden into Google, his webpage will come up. And again, it's Birden. Any book signings or any of those on the horizon?
Yeah, we're in the beginning stages of planning some things. It's and I think initially we're probably going to focus on where I played, like Kansas City and Oregon, and I live now in Arizona, and we'll kind of see where things go. But I'm hoping to really expand that and get it out there, because I believe that as an athlete, I put a lot of time, a lot of effort in, and I think it's a powerful message that many people need to hear. So if I can get it out to the masses, obviously that is the goal. I want to impact as many lives as I can, and that's kind of my mission. One of the missions I have on my website, my mission statement is, I'm all about helping people live healthier lifestyles, mentally, physically, and financially, and that's kind of where I focus between my book. The keynote speaking, I work with a health and wellness company called Isogenics, and so those things allow me to be able to to help people in those capacities.
Well, it is needed, and in terms of having been a professional athlete that was scandal-free, because many people think once you hit that level you have to do something scandalous, and you're proving that. You're a family man. You had a plan B. In other words, while none of us are perfect, for the most part you're doing it the right way. You're doing it, and whatever so-called or what may be perceived as obstacles come up, you deal with it and you move on. And so I applaud you. I am tickle pink. In terms of your webinar, is that something that's ongoing, or kind of just as you throw it out there? How does that work, and how folks can see you in your webinar or take part in that?
Yeah, that's kind of, I typically do one every Thursday, but it's more towards my business with Isogenics and the health and wellness. But every now and then I will do a book webinar, and it's kind of an opportunity for me to kind of what we're doing here, share the reasons why I wrote the book, what people can expect, and then and give them the opportunity to ask me questions. And that first one went over very, very well, so we'll be doing more of those. But I did just release a video campaign highlighting each chapter, kind of taking about a minute. I want to give a little teaser out there, just kind of like chapter 1. Here's what we talk about in chapter 1. So I'd encourage anybody, just Google my name and my book, and you'll be able to see those videos out there and get a feel for the content.
All right. Well, again, audience, you've been feeling JJ's energy at 3 o'clock in the morning his time, which is about 4:20 now our time. But if he can come at you and inspire you at that time of the morning, then you can imagine what it's like during regular hours. And then if you have the opportunity to read the book. So as I said, by Wednesday, no later than Thursday, I will have placed my order. It might even be sooner than that. If it was in the download format, I'd do it as soon as I get home. If it was in the e-reader format, I'd do it as soon as I got home. But since I'm going to order it before the end of the week is out, I will have that done, and I'm looking forward to reading it. I love your spirit. I picked that up through the webinar and through your voice and through the social media. Again, listening audience, it is JJ. Two JJ. You remember like Good Times? Remember JJ on Good Times? JJ. 2 letters. No periods in between. It's JJ Birden. B-I-R, just like a bird. B-I-R-D-E-N. I have thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you this morning, JJ. Thank you so much for rising early to be with me. I record it, and if all the equipment is working correctly, I go home and I do my thing, editing, and it winds up on YouTube. That's where my archives are, and I'll also email you the link.
Excellent. I look forward to hearing it and sharing it, too.
Yes, it is yours. Once you get it, you can promote and use it any way you'd like.
All right, outstanding.
All right. I wish you well. Much blessings to you and your family. God bless you for taking on the nieces and nephews. They are going to be better by it. They will never, ever forget their uncle and aunt. And they probably call you mom and dad by now, but they will never, ever forget what you did for them. This I know. And so God bless you for that, and much blessings as you move forward on all your different projects, and we'll be in touch.
Hey, thank you, Mark. I appreciate you having me on the show, and I want to give a quick little shout-out to my beautiful wife, Raina.
By all means.
She is visiting her sister in Colorado, and she's on the road driving back home. She's listening. She just texts me, "Love you, babe. We'll see you soon." But thank you, Mark, for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's great to make the connection, and keep up the good work. I really love what you're doing here.
Thank you, and we'll do the same. And as I said, we'll be in touch. You never know. Life is strange in terms of networking and contacts. You never know where it's going to lead to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you again. Much success. I will be getting my copy of the book shortly. Again, it is When Opportunity Knocks, 8 Surefire Ways to Take Advantage, written by former NFL player J.J. Birden. JJ, if you're not an early morning person and need to go back and take your nap, feel free to do that. And again, we'll be in touch.
I don't know. I might go hit the gym.
Take care. Oh, wow. Now, that interview was yet another inspiring interview. As I share with you all most weeks, this is not a paid gig for me. Not monetarily. But once you move beyond monetary in terms of the people that I have the opportunity to talk to, the people I have the opportunity to meet, the connections and networking and contacts, that is worth more than any salary that they could pay me. Now, don't get me wrong. If I could do this for salary and make those connections, that's the only thing that would make it even better. But as it is a volunteer gig or a hobby or just something that I really just have a passion about that I do on Saturday mornings, it could not be topped other than when a salary. And when I say salary, I'm not talking about just like a little stipend. I'm talking about where I could do this full time. I wouldn't have to do anything else. But short of that, just the people that I've had the opportunity to meet, such as JJ this morning, and if you heard the folks that he's played ball with and where he's been and some of the obstacles he's overcome, and I meant to tell him about the Oregon Ducks story. about the young man in my school that was an Oregon Duck fan when they were in the playoffs this past year. Forgot all about it. It escaped my memory before we got off the air, but I'll email him about it or either text him about it one way or the other. So we're going to move on shortly into the good news in song, which is the gospel music. We're with you till 9 o'clock a.m. Have some more exciting guests coming up. Most of the time when I get home in the afternoons, I'm doing something. If I'm not doing something for my school, which is generally not too much once I get home because I spend a long time during the day there. And usually when I come home, I'm doing something show related. I'm scouting social media. I'm looking to see who's written a book, who would be an interesting guest to be on the show. And then with the blessings of social media, I reach out to them. And why I say it's a blessing is because for some reason, there's something psychologically connected in social media that people respond regardless of their position. I don't care if they work in the White House. If they have a Twitter account and you follow them, they'll follow you back. Or if you reach out to them, they'll reach back out to you. If they're an athlete, if they're an entertainer. I mean, I have close to 6,000 LinkedIn connections. And in those connections are some high profile people. And these are people that back in the day with snail mail, as we now call it, probably would not have ever seen the letter, let alone respond to it. And yet, if you send out a Facebook message, a tweet, something on LinkedIn, something on Instagram, something on Pinterest, if you send something out through those sites and all the rest of them that are out there and they have one of the sites or connected to it, but most people have more than one, they respond. And I tweeted something yesterday about there's something psychological there, because if even you listen to the words in social media, connection, friend, follow, invite, all of those words are psychological in terms of what you are to each other in the various social media world. But the words, they are what they are to draw you in, to be a part of. And again, it doesn't matter age, gender, what job you do or don't do. Folks respond on social media. And it's the most interesting phenomenon to me. It really is, because as a kid, I remember writing letters to Pittsburgh, to some of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I remember writing to the New York Yankees. I remember writing to this movie star, that movie star, and looking in the mailbox and nothing ever coming back. And now, through social media, you actually get to talk with and chat with, whether they're an actor, whether they're a radio show host, whether they're a TV star, whether they're a football player or a baseball player or a basketball player or a tennis player or a lacrosse player, soccer player, whatever they are, you have the opportunity to communicate with them. So you could be sitting there watching the 6 o'clock news and communicate with one of the anchors, and they'll respond. I'm like, wow, so that's the beauty of social media. And that's most of my guests over the last few years. That's how I've had them given or extended the invitation for them to come on the show. And as I said, they've responded. Hence the interview this morning with JJ Birden. So I'm going to let you play the music. I'm going to let you listen, rather, shall I say, to the music for a little bit. And then we're going to switch on over and we'll be putting on the gospel music, which is the good news in song.